Okay, I'd like to call the meeting to order. Can you turn the gain down a little bit? It's coming in very loud. The volume.
You want to turn the gain down? I don't know.
The volume.
The volume.
Oh,
Easy
the volume
Is it this one? Oh. No, it has to go the other. Okay.
No, you want it up.
That made it up. Okay.
You want it up or down?
That's down.
Yes, you want it down.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry.
It has a very clear, loud carrying. Okay, I'd like to call the meeting to order. I would like, as the first order of business, to entertain a motion from the board to approve our two community citizens who have graciously agreed to serve on the board to fill the two vacancies from Len and John. Do I hear a nomination?
So moved.
Okay, second?
So moved.
Good. Okay, is there any discussion?
What are the terms?
Don't you think you ought to name the people?
Yes.
Thank you, Max. Kurt Larson and Gary Heel.
And
Yes.
how long are the terms that they're filling?
The bylaws prescribe that they fill the terms until the next election, which is the end of June. So this is interim. They do not step into the preceding terms fully. They have to run again after
Okay.
June. Okay. Any other comments or questions? Okay, let's have a vote. Everyone in favor?
Aye.
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 Okay. And we need a, why don't you join us at the table, please?
Okay.
And
The perks of hiring.
before we go on, I'm prepared to entertain a motion to fill the secretary slot.
It's come to my attention that when John resigned, there was left a vacancy for the secretary position. And so I would move that the board approve Kurt, if he would take it, being the secretary.
Second.
Any discussion? Okay, everyone in favor?
Aye.
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 Max?
Stay.
Anyone
He said he
against?
would take the job.
Anyone
Yes.
against? Max, did you vote?
Yes, I did.
I think that was a positive. Okay. So we can proceed at relatively full force. I just want to mention that Dwayne's had an awful problem with his health. He's had horrible bronchitis, as you saw the last time we saw him. I expected him tonight, but I can't blame him for staying home. He's having complications of the bronchitis in terms of asthma. So I also want to note that there is a set of square brackets under all business around the topic called shed in the right-of-way, Calvert. It's not Calvert Drive, it's Rain, isn't it?
No, it's colored. Colored.
Oh, all right. And that set of square brackets is that I need a vote to go into an executive session to discuss the legal options for follow-up so we can give go-ahead to Mr. Shield and his firm. So I need a nomination calling for an executive session for that topic.
You need to vote on that now?
Yes, I do, because it's part of the agenda approval.
So moved.
Second.
Okay. Is there any discussion? Okay. Everyone in favor?
And
I guess we go in there and
Okay,
watch
so Max,
when do you,
did you vote?
Aye, yes.
Anyone against? Okay, it looks like it's
Question,
unanimous.
when do we do this?
At the end of the meeting.
At the end,
It
after
will
new
be at the
business?
end of the meeting, that's the most,
Okay,
thank you for
just
asking.
want to be clear. So you can go on.
Okay, are there any other comments about the agenda before we go ahead? Yes,
I was wondering if Kurt or the other gentleman, if they had anything they wanted to say.
I can't hear you.
I'm sorry.
It's my, don't you be sensitive, go ahead. Ah,
Dwayne, alive.
No, they don't.
My goodness.
It's okay, they don't want to say anything.
you're looking healthy too, compared with the last time.
Try not to cough.
You look wonderful.
Try not to cough on
Kurt's
everybody.
in.
Okay, Dwayne's just arrived.
We're cool. We're cool.
All right, so I believe I have approval of the agenda. Dwayne, we're going to go into executive session at the very end of the meeting to discuss the shed in the right of way, and there's a square bracket around it on your agenda. Okay, I'm now calling for public comment. Anyone wish to say anything? We will have another public comment opportunity just before we go into, okay.
Just an informational type of a thing. I tried several times today to go onto the website and pull up the agenda for this evening, and there seemed to be some problem with that link.
When you,
Could you get on the website?
I could get onto the website, but then when I clicked on the link for agenda for this meeting, that's when things started going haywire. So I don't know if it's a problem with my computer or with the website, but I thought I would mention that so that you could look
you
into
know,
it.
we changed purveyors because we had a problem before.
I'll look at it. I don't know what it might be.
Okay. Thanks for letting us know. Any other public comment? Okay, I need a nomination for approval of the minutes.
I move to approve the minutes as distributed.
I'll second.
As distributed and commented by,
I
Max
move-
made a comment.
Fine.
Okay, you second. Everyone in favor?
Approve.
Anyone against? Okay, it's approved. Office update.
Okay, I've been working with QuickBooks to input the mandatory assessment information, and it's going slowly. So far, I've got all the undeveloped lots have been identified, and the $20 has been posted to those lots. Not to the owners of the lots, but just to the lots themselves. I'm in the process of doing the same with the developed lots, posting $55 to each of those. And once I'm finished with posting all of the developed lots, I'll begin to actually post to the individual accounts for the billing. And this is done one by one, each owner, each lot, so it's a kind of a process. And bills will probably go out late. I'm hoping by the third week of February, which isn't terribly late, but we'll see. Amy and I have been going through the records in the back room. There are boxes of archived general operating and just utility bills, things like this. And we are using the procedural audit that Toll and Griffith provided to us a couple of years ago, and to determine what can and cannot be disposed of. The one thing that's not addressed in the procedural audit are the ballots. And Amy and I have talked about it, and we recommended retaining the bylaw amendment ballots and the roads ballots, road change ballots, covenant fees and so on, indefinitely, and to dispose of the board of director election ballots prior to the current due. So, if anybody has comments about that?
No comment or objection, we'll proceed that way. We're being ultra careful to keep any records, financial or otherwise, even if it's over and above what the auditor recommends we can throw out. We're keeping everything having to do with the STD and the roads.
Yes. All capital
And
expenses.
ballots, bills, invoices.
Just make a comment. Should we proceduralize what what documents we want to keep, so in the future, following boards will be sure that they'll be saving the same kind of documents. Just a thought, whether we need to proceduralize what documents.
Well,
Sounds like
we
we-
have the auditor's
Right,
recommendation.
but as you just stated, we're keeping things beyond what the auditors recommend.
Yeah,
So perhaps that's a good idea. Okay,
all right, so that would go in the policies and procedures.
I would think so, yes.
So, you can look at where you think that might go.
Okay,
Partly in some of the office procedures that's the secretary, secretary office, the manager handles.
okay, all right, I will do that.
And I do want to point out where people are just very sensitive about STD and roads, and so we're keeping everything and not touching. Okay.
Okay. Also, there was a leaner on John Hanson Drive a few weeks ago, which Carl Bowen dropped for us, he cut down. The owner of that property wanted the wood, and I just wanted to let you know I spoke with him, because the wood is still sitting there as of last week. So I spoke with him, and he said that his son, who travels a good bit, will be in town this coming week, and will cut that up and move that out of the right-of-way. I don't know if any of you have noticed that it's there. We've also received our last quarter's operating expenses from the STD funds held at the county in the amount of $18,449.78. And the last thing I have, I was approached by a nationwide insurance representative who wanted to provide a quote for liability insurance, which he did. And he sent us a proposal in the amount of $3,172 for a year. And we've just paid the liability insurance to our current company in the amount of $4,111. So what I've done, I forwarded the proposal to Ralph Swartwood, who's looked our insurance documents over in the past. He's a retired insurance representative. I've not had a response from him yet, but I asked him if he would review the two policies to compare and see if they were the same. And I can have it send it to the board yet, but I can email the proposals to the board as well.
Well, are we in need of renewing the current policy?
The premium was just renewed January 1st.
So it's been renewed,
Yes, it has.
so why would we be looking at a new quote?
I didn't request it. The
Well,
gentleman
just tell
called
them
me
thank
and
you,
asked.
but here's, just let them know what the timeline is and let them bid next year.
Well,
I would spend time on it, we already agreed to,
Well,
on
we're not spending time on the board
Rita
unless
is
we want
spending
to.
time dealing with this, it's a small thing, I
yeah, it's a
understand.
small thing.
But in terms of process, people need to understand when it's time to submit bids.
We can do that.
Just
I
let them
think
know.
I'll just let them know that we'll look at it
Let
next
them
year.
know. I'm not making an issue, just let them know.
That we'll
I
do.
wouldn't, see, that's, Ralph would then have to spend time. I don't think that's necessary because we already have one, unless you want to just know in the future what this guy can do.
Okay, we can do that.
Anything else?
That's all I have.
I have another question.
Yes.
You mentioned that the billing, you're working on getting all the billing done.
Mhm.
What's the process on this? Are we sending out a bill so that I, as a homeowner, are gonna receive two bills, one from the county, or as a part of my real estate? There's an amount that I pay, that's the STD, I believe.
That's correct.
And now
Continue
we
to
are
receive
going
that.
to, the homeowners association is sending out a bill for the covenant fees and this new system.
Correct.
So as a homeowner, I'm gonna receive two bills when I usually get one.
No.
No, you always get
You've always
two.
received two. The one is in your property tax, or your property tax bill. It's listed as a special tax district. As always, that's not changing. I always send out a statement every January, February timeframe, covenant fee and association dues voluntary. This year, of course, was the board's decision to
Okay.
assess
My
the
fault.
mandatory. That's
I
it.
thought that was all in the one bill.
No.
Sorry.
That's okay.
Okay, any other comments or questions? Okay, round table, does,
I have nothing.
you have one?
I have nothing.
You have nothing. Robert, do you have anything? I don't have anything. Brian, do you have anything to report? Outside contacts? Gary, you'll be reporting our roads, like, something?
Yes, I don't have anything other than
You
that. You
don't?
want to talk about roads now?
No.
No.
Okay,
I don't have anything other than that.
Kurt, I presume you have nothing to report from an outside official?
I'm a listener.
Okay,
I'm a learner.
okay.
I have nothing to report.
Okay. Committee reports.
Yes, Max.
Jeff,
Max.
oh, I'm sorry, Max. Do you have anything to report?
I have nothing new to report. You'll have the reports there, I assume, so nothing noteworthy.
Okay, Jeff is not coming tonight, and I'm going to ask, and we're at a very low point in terms of action items. This is midwinter, not a lot is going on with the roads. So I'm going to ask Gary, as a member of the Roads Committee, to update us, including what's going on with the snow incident today.
So I'm up.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, I think the only thing that was ongoing was the, what do you call that thing,
Cell tower?
the guardrail along Mill Creek for Mr. Smith is complete, all that work is done. I inspected it and Jeff has inspected it, looks good.
Shoulders.
The shoulders work is holding off until spring now, because a lot of the shoulder work that has to be done, this is to finish the paving, the repaving that was done. I'll just remind everybody, if you put down dirt and seed, grass seed, and put straw over it, you get a good heavy rain, it could all wash away before the seed gets a chance to germinate. So that really needs to wait till spring. Jeff has talked to the contractor, and even though they're working on the Beretta stuff, they may come and put some CR6 down. They haven't decided yet, but they're going to be, the substantial part of the work will be in the spring, in March.
Okay.
And snow, we probably noticed that there is some, and we have been in contact with Grover, West Grover, Grover's Landscape, all day long. I took the lead on it because West called me. But anyway.
Well, I delegated the lead to you after, and I think it started yesterday. Rhea contacted me.
That's right, it did start last week.
And it's been a phone chain.
So anyway, we agreed to put salt down on the hills and on the intersections before it snowed. They got that down around 11:30, I think it was, something like that. And they continued to do it all the way up until it started snowing. And they haven't done anything else until just before the meeting, I called them and told them that because it's going to be really cold for the rest of the week, to come and plow and get the stuff off the road, or otherwise it'll just be frozen in place. It'd be difficult to get it off. So they're going to plow our roads here in probably an hour and a half, or an hour, something like that. The snow is due to be out of here in about that time. And I also instructed them to take a look at the hills after they plowed, and if there's still a problem, throw some more
Sand.
salt on the hills. And that's where we are with that. That's all I have. Questions? Okay.
Okay, finance, Max?
No, I have nothing new.
Okay. Environmental, I'm sorry to drop this on you, Kurt, but I was actually, there's been so much going on lately, I got diverted by watching the radar on the television of the snow. But I was hoping you'd give us a very brief update, briefer than what you told the environmental committee, what's going on with the cliff action.
Well, I mean, after 2 years, the Cliff Stabilization Advisory Committee, which I'm the Drum Point Association member, is wrapping up its 2 years of study on issues with the cliffs. And they're in the process of putting together a report to the county commissioners with their recommendations and the findings of the committee. And that should probably, that report should probably be done in the next month. And as soon as it's official, then I'll distribute it here in the community and report on it. Basically, I think the things that are, as you might suspect, in the Cliff Stabilization Committee, the committee is made up of people who live on the cliffs and whose properties are damaged. So they have a very biased view of what to do. So, and the recommendations that are being made are obviously really to the benefit of those people living on the cliffs,
Right.
who want to come up with engineering structures to try to preserve the shorelines near their houses. The things that are positive is that 3 years ago, I guess, when Tony O'Donnell had public meetings on this thing, the big issue was tiger beetles, and they were considered to be the scourge of the earth. And because of the work of this committee, as well as just the high visibility of some of the problems, the DNR and Fish and Wildlife Service have come up with a program to mitigate and allow the isolated takings of property which has tiger beetles populations on it, so people are not necessarily burdened. They simply have to pay a mitigation cost to be able to do work and engineering work on their properties. The other thing which has come out of the committee is that for everybody who's worked within the county, the whole permitting process is very complicated. Doing anything with the state and the federal government and the county itself. And one of the recommendations was to try to find ways to simplify or at least clarify the process so that people could better understand the permitting process. And one of the outcomes of this will be a sort of a graphic chart of what actually happens when you want to submit a permit to do work, within the buffer zone, within the critical area, within the whole gamut of things. So there'll be a checklist that you can go through, and hopefully at some time it'll be up on the county website, so people can actually go through and really go through a decision chart.
The county's been threatening to do this for at least 2 years. They just gave up on updating their guide for what can be done in the critical area and took the 1980s version off their shelf of circulars. And they have been doing work on it, but it hasn't appeared yet, so I'm glad to know that it's still in somebody's mind trying to push it.
So that's, as soon as the report is made public, and then I'll make copies of the report available.
Great. Terrific. Planning committee?
There's been no meetings of the planning committee since the last report, so no report.
Okay, nominating committee. Peter, you're meeting this week.
Yeah, we tried to meet last week, but we couldn't get a quorum because of illness and unavailability of some of the members. So we have rescheduled it, and Rhea, I asked if you could make a public announcement on the web that we'll be having a meeting on Thursday, as required by our bylaws, at 7 o'clock here at the office. It's free. Mike Snap had triple bypass instead of a stent, so he's a little shaky. Dan Mathias is available. Marcia Lapin is very enthusiastic and wants to get more involved in community activities. And Joe Arendes is anxious to participate too. So we will do that on Thursday. This will be the first meeting we've even had. So we have to elect a chairman and then pool our resources and see whether we can come up with a slate, and we will be more anxious for anybody to reach out, including board members, to anybody that wants to participate in the decisions of the community. And we thank Dan Mathias, who's already indicated an interest in running for the board too. So that's it. Thank you, Gary, and thank you, Kurt, for stepping up and willing to contribute your experience to the community.
Thank you. Any comments, any additional? Okay, old business. You're on again, Peter. Peter's been very busy and has a lot to report.
This is on beach safety concerns. I wrote up on November 11th a report which I submitted to all of you on the board and to others who are interested. And I hope you read that. I didn't feel it was right to finish this without talking to people directly involved with the beach problem. So I had a meeting on January 16th here at the office, and present were Dorothy Van Pelt, Mrs. Ruggieri, because she goes by the same name as her husband, Dennis Staunton.
That's because they both have the same name.
I know, that's why I call her Mrs. or Josephine. She doesn't like Josephine. So Dennis Staunton, who has for many years, his parents own property here. He is not resident here, but he has participated in the patrol on weekends in the summer. And Rosemary Ray and myself and Paul Rispin joined the group, and Amy was so kind to devote her time as president to come here and sit and listen to these groups who are directly involved and have been directly involved in trying to solve some of the beach problems, as we heard from Joe himself, when Joe Ruggieri came in October, I think it was, and let us have it between the eyes on we got to do something. And I think that was rightfully so. Just to review, I wrote up my report, which I've given to Leah on this last meeting, which I hope will be distributed. In the first meeting, the first part, which we all attended, was to discuss what, where, and who were the problems, to hear it directly from the people involved. Many of us are not directly on that beach, so we don't know the problems, although Amy and Paul have some similar problems. We have the problems, as we expected, non-residents trespassing during, after, and during opening and before opening and closing, after closing, residents without means of identifying themselves. They say, oh, I live down the street, or I'm a friend, or so forth, and so on. Cars parking illegally, transiting pedestrians going to the club property, trash left by everyone, whether they were residents in our community or non-residents. One of the members pointed out that some of our residents drop as much trash as those who aren't residents. So it's just a cultural problem, I guess. Noise and some vandalism. Most offenders appear to be young teenage groups, primarily on summer weekends and weekend nights. Funding has been curtailed for beach monitoring. There are no restraints for crossing from the DPPOA property and going into the Drum Point property, or reverse. Illegal fires pose a danger to all of the Drum Point adjacent residences, and those, of course, in our area. Pedestrians bypass the beach's locked gate simply by stepping onto the adjacent property, adjacent to the gate. And DPPOA tags are not carried by pedestrians, so there is no way of identifying who actually is and is not a resident. Police intervention has not proven to be an effective means of deterring trespassing. And finally, emergency vehicle access is questionable and continues to be a problem. Now, the second part of the meeting, we discussed a lot of options to mitigate these problems. During the past many years, volunteers and residents have been paid to patrol on the weekends, guarding the entry, closing and opening the gate, and cleaning up the beach. They have a roster which they have formed by themselves, and this has all been pretty much on their own. Organizing Joe, Mrs. Ruggieri has been sort of the leader in this group, and frankly, I think they're getting a little tired. Those deeply involved need new resources and volunteers, and a more formalized support group should be recognized and supported by the DPPOA board and the community. Current technology provides for a whole range of motion detectors, videos, infrared night, video recording, sound recording, securities, alarms, etc., which can be linked to smartphones or computers or Wi-Fi. By Wi-Fi, not all sensors have to be activated, and some dummy cameras can act as deterrents. Gates with sensors accessible with keys or magnetic bars can control vehicular access. Marinas and gated communities have used such measures in the past with some success, and we need more specific signage warning about trespassing and the fact that video surveillance is enforced. So these were the discussions which came out of that meeting. I want to reach out to Cindy, who lives down at the Drum Point Club, because she, as probation officer, has dealt with many of these kids, knows what their issues are, and possibly she might have some comments based on the video surveillance that's done down there and her own experience in bringing, I think, a great deal of mitigating down at the club in terms of trespassing and untoward events down there. I'll be in touch with her soon. I'm pricing out some of these options. There's so many options that first I think we got to figure out what we can do on a step-by-step basis to see what works and what doesn't, and then see how much support there is within the community to go to a more expensive, or how many resources we really want to put into this problem. But let me emphasize again that I feel that these people who have been doing this for these years, for whom there is now no funding and have not gotten proper recognition by the community. After all, it is our problem, even though most of us don't live there. Just like the launching ramp, it is our property, it is our private property, and we have to deal with this even though we aren't living adjacent to the beach. So I think the board deserves to spend some time figuring out whether we want to have monitoring again, and who can do that. I think Joe Ruggieri has a great deal of ideas and can lead this based on her experience. And I do hope to hear from Fran as president or other members of your community, including myself, to see if what the club can do to help. I hope I haven't repeated some of the things I've said before, but I really feel it's important for the board to back up those members of the community who really stepped up over the years to help us out. Thank you. Paul, do you want to say, you were at the meeting?
Yeah, a thank you is really due to all those people. That was one of the things I took away from the meeting. And the other thing is that the integration of all of the electronic stuff that Peter's talking about is so far advanced that you can go out and buy it for a few $100s at Lowe's. I mean, all the difficult stuff is now a consumer item, cheap consumer item.
Yeah, and I have some comments and a couple of issues that we've got to pursue. One is that I took a walk with Mrs. Joe this morning before the snow came down, and she pointed out that the spirit and ringleaders of this group has been functioning for many years now at the beach. The two of them, Mr. and Mrs. Ruggieri, are octogenarians. and although they look fabulous, I think we have to institutionalize this and give them some, well, certainly I think in the long run, we probably, and I haven't worked it up in my mind, we need to think about making some kind of a standing committee right now. Peter and with some support from Paul do not, and John McCall and Rourke do not constitute a committee. But at the very least, we need to think about at least having Mrs. Joe on our roster for regular reports in the future. Secondly, Rhea is now keeping the phone tree for the rotations at the beach.
Yes, it's not a phone tree, but it's
Whatever it is.
That's the list of volunteers. Max, I just passed the list to Rhea, and people who have signed up to rotate through. I don't know how many of these are active though, Rhea.
They should all be active, those are the people on the list. Yeah.
All right, and I don't want any action taken on this tonight. A lot of this is gonna have to be written up in terms of options with technical support. You know, in the past, technical support was so expensive as to be what we considered out of our reach, but it seems appropriate now to move in that direction. And if we do so, we have to figure out how we get power down there, and because there's a light pole, and do we pay for it? I don't want to work it, but these are issues. Do we pay for it, or how do we tap the electrical resources down there? And we've had many discussions about the sheriff's office ticketing or not ticketing outsiders, but if we have video surveillance, we have some evidence we can provide to the sheriff's office, and maybe tickets would be an effective deterrent as well. So all of these things have got to be written up in concrete terms and taken to the planning committee, because we're doing our long-term budgeting this spring. So this report is excellent, gives us a very good foundation. And of course, we really have got to get together with the club, because the club has all kinds of monitors to keep people out, and then they just come around from our side. And we have the ongoing fire issue. I think we have some more work to do to get back to at least the planning committee and then come back here. Any comments or questions?
Yeah, I'd just like to point out that we do have money in the budget for security on the beach. We are continuing the security and the monitoring on the beach.
Gary?
Yeah, we had money, we've already overspent our budget by $300 this year. So, yes?
If I could just comment about that, we have overspent it, but that goes primarily to, well, it does, it goes to the beach patrol, the people that take, check the permits, or the hang tags on the weekends, and a few times we've hired the off-duty Calvert County deputies. We are over budget, but the next time I have to pay that, it will come out of next year's budget.
Right.
Because it will not occur until June, it will not be paid until July.
That's right.
But all of that money, Max, goes toward that type of expense so far.
But we're talking about additional capital expenses to put in actual devices that'll be there and certainly augment what we have in place in terms of people. So that does.
Somebody had mentioned in the past, if we could put something between the two properties to keep them from going through there. I do have a Navy anchor chain. I guarantee they won't go through it.
Rapid ship or
But
cruiser?
it does weigh 600 pounds, so take a while, it'll take a couple people to hook it up.
Fran, did you say?
Yeah, you know the hole in the gate?
Yeah.
Yes, okay. Well, we have a length of a gate that all we would need to do is get some help to dig out the sand that has come up and would make it hard for us to set that one gate in there. And I think it's big enough to do that. And that's something that we can look at.
We'll probably want a permit to do that. I don't know.
Why?
Fixing what the
We're
fire.
repairing what the
Just
fire
repairing?
department,
Oh, okay, okay, okay.
yeah,
I
what the
thought you
fire
meant-
department crashed through.
Okay.
Yeah, it's just digging the, you're not putting in posts or anything.
No.
Okay.
Okay.
I have a question. Rhea, is it your feeling that those people who are on that list are willing to take over from Joe and Mrs. Ruggiero in terms of making a working volunteer group and some of it being paid? Is that correct? Is that the feeling you have?
These people are not paid. These people are the people who open and close that gate 24,
During the week.
365 days a year.
Are they willing to continue to do this?
As far as I know they are, yes. They just started there in the fall. I think
Right.
I've done just the second rotation. When I first did the schedule, I think I started it in, I don't know, August, September? No, I remember. It was the end of September. And I did that through the beginning of January, and then I redid it for the upcoming season. But yes, I think they're all very willing to continue. But that's separate from checking those hang tags and so on the weekends. These people don't get paid. That's just opening and closing the gate.
And Joe also reminded me that in the past, we were regularly paying minimum wage type to the people who handled the gate on the weekends and stood watch.
Those people checked for hang tags, and we pay them $10 per hour.
Right.
And that's a whole separate list from these people.
Ah,
Steve Lawson handles that.
but she said that we're no longer, and this is only in the summer, but that's no longer happening?
It happened last summer, that's why we're $400 over budget in that line item.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, well, let's get all that stuff put together in some kind of a budget proposal, and take it through the planning committee. And meanwhile, I'll be talking to you, maybe, and we can check into things like the electrical power and what to do about the sheriff ticketing or not ticketing. Any other discussion? All right, this was very helpful. Next, entrance sign. Larry is away staying warm, and Fran has been doing some research.
Yep. The big sign that has been out behind the house here, the office, is still up at Hilltop. And so.
That's the Leeson's Cove sign.
Right, the Leeson Cove sign, right. And when Larry gets back and the weather is appropriate, we will paint that sign and be able, and I know that we can get the wooden decal letters at Michael's.
Mhm.
And then when it's appropriate, we'll have that sign put up on Leeson Cove.
All right, wait, let me just clarify. You don't need wooden, you just need plastic decals to go on Leeson's Cove sign. And the other issue is that Larry had partly put the entrance sign together,
Right.
and Rhea located wooden letters at Michael's.
Well, yes.
And to patch the blank spaces in the boards, Gary has identified a compound that'll stay on no matter what.
Right, I read that.
So, and that we can't pick up and take to somebody to fix, it's either replacement or refurbishing. So presumably Larry will, and you will also be working on that.
Right.
Okay.
So does that mean that we're going to just repair the old sign in place where it's at now? We're not
Yes,
replacing it?
yes.
So then I would move that we go ahead and get the electrical work done so we can get that light back up there. Since we're not gonna be moving, relocating, or replacing that sign, there's no reason not to proceed with the electrical work.
I think in the repair work, there'll be some movement of the sign, because the posts that are there, the side supporting posts are not stable.
Right, so that's why we've been saying the electrical can't be completed until the sign is erected again in a stable fashion. So,
I personally don't see why it can't be done. They're not connected to each other, so the one stands alone behind it, so.
it's, with all due respect, Max, the electrical connection, power source, and there's actually, part of this is there's actually a three-pronged outlet for a power source in the sign itself. It's a part of the structure of the sign, and that power source, again, is associated with the electrical light. And I don't think it's a good idea personally. I don't think anyone else here who's been looking at the sign closely to get that light up before all of that is straightened out.
I've been.
Well, that receptacle could be removed. It doesn't have to be on the sign. It could be part of the electrical work that's being constructed on the new light pole and everything.
Well, I think that might be an added expense, since
Oh,
there's no
$800
construction
already
to
a
hold
big
it.
I'm sure that if there's a receptacle on the sign, it would have to be at least inspected, if not repaired or replaced, along with the rest of the electrical work, so I would assume that it's probably included.
The electrical panel and the supporting pole that would hold the light up, fixture up that hangs out over top of the sign itself is all part of the sign. Now, it may be possible to do it in a way that wouldn't be disturbed when you fix the sign, but if it is, might have to pay again to have it redone.
Right, that's right.
I agree with you that we should get that fixed, but I think that if we do that, we might have to pay for it on more than one occasion. And unfortunately, the weather is such that you can't go out and paint the sign on the outside, right now. I think it's just gonna have to wait. Now, we might wanna consider, see if we can find somebody that's got some kind of solar powered, something we could put up temporarily, but I really think, Max, if you go back there and take a look behind the sign, you'll see that if we do something now without the sign being fixed, that we may have to come back and do it again.
All right, I'm ready to go ahead with the executive session. Oh, I'm sorry,
Excuse me,
not
new
executive, I'm
business?
sorry, excuse me. We need our new business. We need to consider the performance award for West Grover for the last snow event. And I wasn't here personally. Some of the rest of us were out of town. Max and Dennis and Fran indicated their interest in resolving this and the appropriate place so that the community can hear the full deliberations is this meeting. Now, Rhea, do you want to introduce it at all?
Well, we already have a motion to do that in a second, so the motion's already out there.
I'm sorry, I disallowed that motion. If you would like to restate the motion for this meeting, you're welcome to.
The motion was to go ahead with the 10% performance approval based upon the minimum amount of work that was done and the lack of any emergency around the situation.
Second the motion.
Yes, Gary.
And I'll caveat my remarks by saying I wasn't on the board and I didn't have anything to do with this. However, let me point out that the performance bonuses is the only profit on paper that this vendor gets. And I think anything other than a normal bonus, which I think is 12.5%,
Yes.
would be saying they didn't do an adequate job. And so the question would be, in my mind, did the vendor do what was asked of them? If not, then a less bonus, if more, then a higher, and if they did the job as asked to do, then it should be 12 and a half.
I wonder, yes, and I wanted to ask Rhea for a comment too. But go ahead, Dennis.
Is what you're saying that 12.5% was given in, are you, if I'm hearing you correctly, or if not, you will correct me. 12.5% is what we've given in the past for a minimum amount of work that
Normal
for
performance.
normal performance. So I agree with Gary. Shouldn't go less than what we normally or in the past have given. So I'm willing to remove my second. If Max, I remove my second.
You removed your second? Or you
Well, we
like?
can vote the motion down, up or down, never mind.
Well, I would just like to rebut that I don't know about any normal or average or anything else in any contract. We agreed to pay them 10, 12 and a half, or 15% based upon the amount of work done and so on. So if someone else has established an average of 12 and a half, it's never been voted on as an average by the board. And there was a minimum amount of work done, and I heard there was a lot of dissatisfaction that it didn't really accomplish very much. So I just thought the 10% for the minimal amount of work that was done was satisfactory.
I want to add something, and I hope Rhea will, so even if you raise your hand, I'm in line after Rhea.
Oh, thank you. The contractor did what we asked him to do. I think that the problem, having spoken with the contractor, really stems from the fact that rather than putting all rock salt down, which is what the county does, and that's why you saw Dogwood, Clear, and Beretta, rock salt is a little more efficient. Our contractor uses a combination of rock salt and calcium chloride. Thank you. And in trying to save us a little bit of money, he's aware that we have a budget concern. He does not use an abundance of the product. He's trying to be conservative with our money. And he said, if you want me to, I can put more down and it will work better. So it's always a toss-up. How much do you want to spend? It's not that he didn't do the job. It's the product.
Let me just note that I have a concern. I said I was going to go after you.
Sure, go ahead.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I have a concern because, Max, I'm not sure you were here during all of the deliberations for all of the snows, but I have certainly heard 12.5% discussed on this board as an adequate job and adequate payment. Also, the timing of the distribution of the salt makes a difference. If you do it after the icing event, it's not as effective. If you do it before, you want to get it down before, but I understand that there was some rain that came in at the head of that mixed precipitation, and the contractor was working with you and one of the board directors to set the timing, right, Rhea?
I believe so, yes.
Just
Okay. Dennis.
so that my feeble brain understands this. 10%, we have a graduated reward system. The lowest of which we say the minimum that you will get is 10%. So 10% is the baseline. If you do better than, you get 12.5. If you do outstanding, you get 15. Why have three levels if that's not the case? The second thing that I wanted to ask is, what are we talking about here? What was the total bill, and what was 10%, and what's 12.5? How much money are we talking about? What was the bill?
$7,000 about.
So we're talking 700 versus, what, 12.5 for 7?
Now, well, Keep in mind, the percentage is not on the full invoice, the percentage is on the labor, not on the
I'm asking
material.
what amount of money we're
So it's
talking
not
about.
$700, 10% would be $311. 12%, which is what I figured, is $373.56. 15% is $466.
Well, if we have a baseline, that should be for the minimum amount of work. As far as I'm concerned, if that's not correct, then correct me.
My understanding, Barry, also you said,
Yeah, my understanding of the contract, as when it was set up was, it's a reward contract. It's, in other words,
Right.
this is your cost, and we will give you a bonus based on your performance.
Correct.
If you always, it's not a baseline, it's performance, and your average
The
performance.
reward is a baseline. We say for a minimum amount of performance, you get 10%.
No,
no.
No,
Well, it has to be that, if I can
I
interrupt.
don't
because-
understand that.
Because otherwise, you're saying that the contract defines the 10% as a penalty award, and that's not true. It has to be the minimum performance, a good performance, and an outstanding performance, just as Dennis said. So, for lack of any emergency or any real, urgency about anything, to me, it just was required the minimum amount of work to do that.
Can I,
okay,
All right,
That's my point,
yeah,
that's
go ahead,
since
Dan.
Rhea has dealt with this, what is it, I know this may not be the right way to do it. I mean, what is the expectation here? I mean, is it 12.5% we should deal with? Because the money is insignificant. The amount of money is insignificant. I don't think we should be spending an hour talking about it. It's a concept. If we need to go back and look at what we've said in the contract to make certain we're not overstepping. But if you all think the guy did, a little bit above the norm, then 12.5%, no big deal, just do it. Just do it.
I also want to note that the billing is separate for the labor and machinery versus the salt. So, they are trying to be as efficient as possible with our resources.
I would tell you, if I was a contractor and you gave me 10%,
You feel slighted.
I would say, why did,
One
why
at
am I
a time,
taking care of
please.
you?
You would say what?
Why am I taking care of you? If you're not gonna, give me what was considered. I always thought 12.5 was the baseline. 10% was if you didn't do a good job, and I always thought you could go to 0 if you really didn't like it.
We all stand corrected, it's 5 to 15%.
Uh-huh.
It's not, it's just
What
a
does
letter.
it say?
There's no actual contract, it was just on the letter.
There's nothing.
What?
It's 5 to
There's nothing.
15%.
It's 5 to 15%, and there's nothing in the contract that specifies what the 5 or the 15 is for, other than performance. Therefore, the average performance should be somewhere between 5 and 15%.
Ergo 10.
The average of that is 10.
Call for the question.
I have a comment. I just want to note that Wes has been, Johnny on the spot has served us extraordinarily well consistently over the years. This is the only time I've heard that the county roads look better than ours. In all my years on the board, which are well over 3 years, and a lot of snowfalls. And I am concerned about who will bid on next year's contract if we're not very careful about what we did on a joint decision of when and what to do. So I'm now calling for the question, and I need a restatement from Rhea of what the motion is.
Max Munger made a motion to award a 10% above the cost of labor for performance of West Road.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 3 ayes. Aye, and Max.
Okay, All opposed? It fails. Okay, I need a motion for a performance award other than 10%.
I move we award a 12.5%.
Are we ready to vote? Okay, all in favor? All opposed?
I guess I'll oppose.
I'm opposed.
Okay, it's 12.5%. All right, we're now,
Chairperson,
excuse me,
could I make a comment, please?
yes,
I would suggest we look at this for the future, that we have a document of a letter that says 5 to 15%. It is incumbent upon us to understand what we mean by that. To not go through this kind of discussion again. Let's have a little definition of terms or whatever, so we can properly reward people if the reward is merited, according to whatever we say is.
When I drive, from my house, I can hear the wires spinning,
yes.
trying to get up the hill,
Now?
and hear the trouble.
Oh, well, we told him to hold off on plowing again until the snow is over. Otherwise, it would have to be done twice and cost us quite a bit of money. So that was our decision. But thank you very much. We are going to take care of it, and we're also going to go after the fact and make sure that if there are any remaining slippery areas after the plowing, that they're treated. Okay, now I'm inviting public comments before we go into executive session. Yes, Peter?
This pertains to the board only, well, indirectly. Our former board member who's contributed a lot to this community is going to have to go into the hospital again for probably heart ablation. And he's not feeling too well. I spoke to him last night. I think it would be appropriate if the board could thank him for his service and wish him well and something. It would be appropriate.
Is this a drug adjustment, or are they going to do a pacemaker?
So they're going to have to go in and cauterize some of the nerves because his heart is not back to normal at all.
When is the procedure? Or don't know yet?
You called it a heart ablation?
No, it's an ablation. You go in and you cauterize the nerves which you think are causing
The fibrillation?
Well, he has flutter and fibrillation. I don't want to get into his privacy, but since he has served long, and we sort of expected him to recover, but he's still chugging along, and is not doing as well as I hoped.
Okay. We'll pull something together and somehow get it signed and sent. Okay, and yeah, you had a comment.
Two comments. One is on the sign at the Red Boulevard, and that is that the left-hand post is very badly leaning over, and what it has done is split apart the boards of the sign. And nothing really can be done on that straightening. And that includes the electricity in the back. And the second one is on the 12.5, 10, 5, whatever number. You really need a three-part thing, no matter what the numbers are. You have to have a way of rewarding good performance, and you have to have a way of bringing to his attention any bad performances. So you need a low, a middle, and a high. A warning, you've done the work, you've done good work. You need three. Whatever the numbers you figure out to be.
We will draft the next contract RFP very carefully, and those are helpful comments. If there are no more, yes, Dan?
All the other things I would have spoken to have already been addressed. So the only one that I have left is from the beginning of the meeting. And correct me if I'm wrong, but wasn't the nationwide liability insurance quote like $1,000 cheaper than the other one? I think as a resident that that is worth looking into. If this insurance is similar to other insurances, if you cancel a policy, you will get a refund back for the unused amount that you paid. So if you looked into and decided nationwide is equivalent to the other one for $1,000 less per pay period, that seems a worthwhile endeavor to look into, not just, oh, we'll just wait till next year. So that's my comment.
Well, just to react, the request is out to vet the situation, and there's nothing to stop us from bringing an update to the board as soon as we have more information. Okay, I'm ready to go into executive session.